Alright, I'm here today to show off every single book I've ever read as a pre-med. But before I show you all the books and kind of give a little summary of what I took away from them, I want to talk about learning from books in general. And the reason I want to do that is because I don't actually think it's as efficient as you might think. In my opinion, when you're learning things, there's really two subtypes of knowledge. The first type of knowledge is the factual knowledge that's more memory-based. That's like dates when you're studying history, or variables like Avogadro's number from chemistry, these sorts of things, or names of amino acids and abbreviations, these sorts of things, where you're memorizing stuff, or rules. And then there's heuristics, there's bigger picture items, conceptual ideas. That's the second category in my opinion. And I think when you read a book and you don't take any notes, you're going to at best get that second picture, category of ideas, the big picture. And if you're like me and you read a lot of books, and then sometimes an idea comes up in conversation and you're trying to explain it to someone, you'll say the big picture idea from the book, then you won't know any of the details, those factual pieces like the dates or the reason behind the big picture idea, maybe the events, the names of the people. And to learn that information, you kind of have to, first of all, have flashcards. But second of all, what I've discovered is this is a bad way to go about reasoning about things. You don't want to just copy-paste the author's idea into your brain and then start repeating it to everyone you meet. Not that I necessarily do that, just you don't want to be repeating things in general. What I would say is when you're reading books, think about who the author is, think about what their competing interests might be, and then analyze that bigger picture, heuristic, ideas, conclusion, and maybe change it based on your own ideas or beliefs. And be skeptical of authors. A lot of authors are not unbiased. In fact, I would argue almost no one is completely free of bias. Like probably no one, literally no one, is free of bias. So, with that being said, let's go over some of the books I've read in particular. So, I'll start off with the book I'm reading right now that I'm not done with. We have Keynes versus Hayek, The Clash That Defined Modern Economics. And this book, I'm not done with it. I'm about 3/4 of the way done. It's very interesting in my opinion, but a lot of people might not think it's interesting because it's nonfiction and it's kind of dense and it's just economic stuff. Although, it's not as dense as a lot of other economics books. There's a little narrative, a little history of the people in the book. But look, I want to say, it's important if you're studying medicine to learn about stuff that's not just science related, that's not just health care related, because being a doctor is not just about what you're practicing. It's not just about the interventions you're doing. In my opinion, you're kind of like an advocate, and you should be involved in the political sphere to some extent, because you have specialized knowledge. And why should people with no specialized knowledge be making healthcare decisions in the political realm? So, because of that, it's really good to learn about economics, United States history, global history, the Federal Reserve, insurance, kind of all of these pieces, so that you can be more of a spokesperson. Which is what I'm trying to do with this YouTube channel, is to learn, educate, and be a spokesperson as I learn more about history, economics, etc., and healthcare. So look, here I'll go over. So these are the textbooks. Most of them I've actually read cover to cover. Like this college physics textbook, I literally read cover to cover over a summer, and because I was taking an accelerated physics course. And look, I don't really recommend that, to be honest with you. I think when you read, even if you're making flashcards, which is what I was doing, that's really inefficient. Because you don't need to read the whole thing to make the flashcards. And I don't know, whatever. I would recommend, if you're studying right now, you're going through your pre-med years, flashcards and practice problems should be your main focus. The flashcards are for those factual informations, the first category of information, factual memorization, and then the practice problems are like the second category, the bigger picture, the heuristic, and you need to really apply those factual pieces to the big picture, the steps to problem solving. An example of this would be like you're studying organic chemistry, you're studying synthesis. You need to make flashcards for all of the reaction types, and then you need to practice applying that to a bigger picture puzzle type synthesis problem. where you need to use all that knowledge to answer the questions. And this comes up again and again, whether it's the MCAT, whether it's any of your science classes, and when you're just learning in your free time about economics or other things, you have to memorize those dates and stuff. And then to come up with your own ideas, you want to learn about other people's heuristics and apply all the dates and events to their ideas, and then compare with your own thoughts and come up with your own idea. Okay, so I guess I'll just, look, I'm going to skip over some organic chemistry textbook. I read not the whole thing, but a lot of it, almost all of it. Got a hyphy textbook here. Got a neuroscience textbook. Okay, I'm going to skip some of the textbooks. The Wealth of Nations, Harvard Classics. I really like these types of older books. I'm just really very weird. I like the way that they feel in your hands, the way they smell compared to newer books. I'm just a little bit weird. Anyway, so, and then also read Plato's Republic. And one thing I thought was interesting about Plato's Republic is the take on economics, and also specifically on lending money at interest. Plato thought that was unnatural because there was no finite ends to your goal, like usury or tokos. He thought it was unnatural that money should come from money because there's no finite limit, and he sort of defined natural as being bound to tangible things in reality, which is I think it's a big problem nowadays because people don't even have tangible interests. They want money as a form of like boosting their self-esteem or feeling like they're progressing towards a goal, and they don't have an ends in mind at all. So, okay, let's see. My organic chemistry lab manual. At one point I was gonna make a chemistry YouTube channel, but it was just a disaster. I just spent so much time and money trying to like get equipment and do things, and it just didn't work. I love autobiographies of musicians. My favorite one is the Dr. John autobiography, Under a Hoodoo Moon. And I just love Dr. John's music a lot. I like his story. Look, he had kind of a messed up life, just like almost all these musicians. And I just like the city of New Orleans. I like the food from New Orleans. I think it's funny the way Dr. John talks. I like his stage presence when he walks up to the piano at the jazz festival, the more recent jazz festival, and he plays his whole set. That live performance on YouTube is what really put me onto his music. I've read the Miles Davis autobiography, and I like it when it's an autobiography, And I don't know if there's any musician. Yeah, I like it when it's an autobiography because I read the Jerry Garcia biography, and it's just a different feel when someone else wrote it. Musicians have a very unique style of writing, and you can tell that they wrote it, and it's just much more authentic. So Miles Davis autobiography I read. I've read the Greg Allman autobiography. I love the Allman Brothers Band. I love, he's just everything I love. Guitar, motorcycles, maybe not so much the heavy drug use and alcohol problems, and that stuff obviously doesn't really resonate with me as much. I'm just not into that sort of stuff. But the motorcycle riding and guitar playing is just awesome. So, and let's see, we got Wim Hof Method I've read. I think, look, I think the Wim Hof Method is, I don't know about the efficacy of it as a treatment for anything, but dude, I kind of agree with what he says. If you just take a cold shower, at least for me, the experience kind of speaks for itself. It's very, it makes you feel really good. And the same thing for running. And look, here's another thing. It's a lot of people I've gone for runs with people that don't run, and I'm I feel the runner's high. It's amazing at the end of a 3-mile run if I haven't ran in a while. And then other people are I just feel like shit. I don't understand where you're coming from. So maybe cold showers are like that. Maybe some people get a cold shower high, a runner's high, and some people are I'm just cold and this sucked. I don't know. I have a lot of sci-fi books here. My favorite sci-fi book is A Scanner Darkly by Philip K. Dick, and there's actually a movie directed by Richard Linklater, and it's rotoscoped. It's a very good adaptation in terms of like sticking to the original framework of the book. It's almost like dialogue for dialogue, word for word, follows the Philip K. Dick book. That movie, A Scanner Darkly. Another great movie is Waking Life. I actually have some movies here on my bookshelf. My favorite movie of all time is Gattaca. Excellent movie. If you haven't seen Gattaca, you should watch Gattaca. And I really like Leo Tolstoy. I have the Sebastopol sketches here. My favorite short story by Leo Tolstoy is The Death of Ivan Ilyich. Look, if you're going to maybe go to medical school, you should read The Death of Ivan Ilyich, you know. And, I mean, it's awesome. Very interesting. So is Confession by Leo Tolstoy. It's more of like it's almost autobiographical. Like he's just kind of talking about his own experience. And I frankly kind of relate to that experience a little bit. But anyway, like check out those short stories. Like that is awesome fiction. Or even nonfiction, I guess, in the case of a Confession. Let's see. We've got Behave, which I didn't finish all of because it was a lot of review from my like undergrad. It was like Phineas Gage and blah blah blah, and I was like, okay, I don't want to read this anymore. Although I did read all of Determined by Robert Sapolsky, which was pretty cool. Pretty weird, but pretty cool. I will say though, Determined, dude, Sapolsky has like this really annoying style where he'll just put like paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs in the footnotes, and it feels like he just text-to-speeched the entire thing, just saying random shit. And it's like, dude, I don't know. I mean, I just don't really like his writing style that much, and I feel like the topic of free will has already been written about a lot. That being said, it was still kind of interesting, so whatever. Let's see. We got I already said Behave. I love the poem, A Raisin in the Sun. And I know the audience it's directed towards, but let me just tell you that it resonated with me for totally unrelated reasons. Let me read you the poem. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it sink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? And I had to memorize that in my freshman English class. And you know what it reminded me of is I really wanted to go bike across the entire state of California and then take Amtrak back home to Northern California, because I'm originally from California. And that dream kept getting deferred, and it has never happened for me yet. And, like I would think back to the poem, I was like, what's going to happen with my dream? Is it going to disappear? Is it going to sag like a heavy load? And look, I know what the poem is supposed to be about. I've read this play. I know who Langston Hughes is. And I know my application of the poem is just kind of not grounded in what the poem is supposed to be about. Whatever. I'm just sharing some stuff about me. Lifespan is another book that I read in high school. And it was very interesting and shaped my entire perspective. Oh, look, I have all these notes in here. I always did do this when I read books. I like take a ton of notes. Don't remember a lot of the stuff when I was younger, at least. Now I just make Anki flashcards. But I agree with what Sinclair was saying there. It's like we're kind of addressing the wrong problem. We're addressing the moldy spot on the floor and changing the floorboards, and not addressing the leaky ceiling that's causing the moldy floor, when we're just treating a bunch of diseases and not treating aging, which is like causing the diseases. Interesting. I like his thinking. I thought the book was cool. So yeah. Oxygen Advantage. Don't remember anything from that book except that you're supposed to breathe through your nose. So. And let's see, what else do we got going on over on this bookshelf? I've read the entire Bible cover to cover. And I think everyone probably should at least read the New Testament, the Old Testament, up to maybe through Exodus, some of the Psalms, all this. Because look, to understand a lot of context for history and Western civilization and literature in general, The stories from the Bible help to provide context for all of that. So whether you're an atheist or not, just for the purpose of understanding history and the structure of government in the West, you should probably read some of the Bible and understand some of the significance from a historical perspective. As a complete side note, I think everyone should investigate religion not just for understanding history, but because the question is so important. It's like you should probably investigate it because if any religion is true, then there's an immense amount of payoff. It doesn't make sense to just completely write it off because it doesn't make sense to you at first glance. Like, imagine you're listening to an organic chemistry professor try to explain something, and he's talking about like Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, and you're like, you're insane. What do you mean? Like, you can't know the location of it, like a particle, once you start to know with more precision about the time or whatever. Or he's talking about anything in physics that's more complicated, and he just sounds completely insane. You wouldn't just write him off for sounding insane, you would ask more questions. I think the same thing can apply to religion. I think you should not just write people off because you have one thought in your mind, which likely a lot of other people have asked. You should maybe delve more deeply and ask more questions. I'm still, not fully convicted about anything regarding religion. I'm still exploring a lot of stuff. And that's all I'll say about that for now. Maybe I'll revisit it in the future. Okay. Look, I've read a lot of books. I don't really want to say every single one. I'm currently reading History of Civilization by Will Durant. So that's just a little bit of my formative literature journey. If you thought this was interesting and you want to follow me on my journey to becoming a doctor, you can click the buttons below the video to follow me on that journey. Tune in tomorrow and every Friday for my weekly Science in the News video series, where I'll talk about sometimes new developments and new research papers, and other times just concepts that relate to current events that might not be as recent of a discovery, but might just be pertinent to that. And eventually I hope to turn it into a live stream once the channel grows. And if you want to see that happen, help me make the channel grow. So that's all I've got for you.